DOJ's response to Trump's request for those classified documents he stole in Mar-a-Lago.
Surrounding the FBI's search of Mar-a-Lago.
Former President Trump's Florida home.
It's out the case against Donald Trump.
On the trove of classified documents kept at Mar-a-Lago.
The former President Trump's Mar-a-Lago investigations.
During the search at Mar-a-Lago.
I'm already bored. Mar-a-Lago.
You know, I have classified documents in my house, too.
Do you
I
trust
don't know you. I
the
don't.
FBI in all this?
No, because they're going to be at Pastor Toby's house pretty soon.
Man, I'm losing some faith in all this.
I don't know you.
$27 billion. Uvalde parents are going to be suing, it looks like the public school,
districts?
Robb Elementary School District, and various agencies of the federal government, whatever that means.
Is
There we
that
go.
Go after
biblical?
FBI.
It's Beer and Psalms Wednesday. Pastor Toby, Chuck Knox, I'm the water boy. It's good to be with you.
I'm sorry. Did you crack open your beer before we hear the psalm?
It's Beer and Psalms Wednesday.
All right, guys.
I mean,
Guys.
there we go.
Guys, go ahead, Pastor.
Guys.
You better get him.
Dime payments. Dime payments.
Yeah.
That's what you need to hear about.
I
Hey,
do.
they'll be
Is
at
it-
our conference.
As a
too.
Christian-owned processing
Yes.
payment business, every business needs a payment process system. Go to dimepayments.com/FLF and sign your business up. You can open beer for me while I'm reading this. Working with them
Actually,
supports us. They won't cancel you like Stripe canceled President Trump. They won't cancel you like MailChimp canceled the Babylon Bee. Check them out. At least have a phone call and tell them that Cross Politics sent you. Go to dimepayments.com/FLF.
Isn't it wrong? I don't think we're supposed to have beer before we hear the
No,
song.
we do. We do it every
Do we?
Wednesday.
Just play it real quick right now.
Okay, I think that's a
Real
good
quick.
point.
Just-
I think,
Just preview it real quick.
There we go.
There we go.
Psalm 110.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Ah,
Cheers to the
There we go.
king.
Cheers.
Cheers to the
Cheers to the
king.
king.
Cheers.
Would you hand me that glass over there?
Can't reach you. Oh, yeah. There you go. There you go.
That was
Okay.
So we covered we yesterday. We walked through the whole Texas Commission
Right.
and the study, basically their study on what happened with the Uvalde shooting.
Big fat F.
Yeah, at the administration, the school administration level, at the police level, and apparently some federal agencies are going to be involved in the lawsuit.
And also, at that kid's parents' level.
So
Is that in the report?
Dad, it wasn't important. Remember, we closed out with that.
That's right.
Bonner and Bonner law firm out of California, San Francisco.
Oh.
Yeah, they're representing the 12 families
Like I trust them.
that are suing $27 billion lawsuit in all this, which, as we just mentioned, the Robb Elementary School, Texas Department of Public Safety, and
Chocolate
elements
stout?
of the federal government, whatever that means.
Sorry, I can't pay attention.
this is good stuff.
You like that? You like that? So, but where we ended up yesterday, we kind of went through the report and everything, and we left everybody with the question is, who can we sue? Who should the families sue?
Well,
Everybody.
Should they be allowed to sue
and
the
their
school?
goats.
Should they allowed to be school? Should they be allowed to sue the police for negligence and for not going in fast enough, for not protecting the kids and so forth? And then the last question is, I mean, should they be able to sue the dad? You remember the report? You got the report. The report yesterday ended with talking about the breakdown of the family and all this, which was actually pretty good, and how they were talking about the breakdown of the family.
You mean it ended with that? No. It was in the first part of it. They actually have a whole breakdown on the attacker.
So you think
and
they
his
should?
family.
You think they should sue the dad, Gabe?
Well, I think the dad is raised this son, or didn't raise the son. He was negligent in how he raised his son, and I think that at some point there's an ox goring the ditch scenario. I would think at some level here.
Ox goring a ditch.
An ox goring the ditch. Wow.
Oxes are welcome
That's
to gore
incredible.
dicks.
That
This
beer.
is hold on. You can't even. I
beer
messed
is
you
good.
up. I messed you up.
Beer.
Yeah.
There's an ox goring scenario at some point that you'd obviously have to be able to demonstrate some of this historically with the child.
So this is the principle, and the law is that if you would have to have him actually shooting up some other school.
Or
at
just
least
some
being-
sort of criminal activity that's pretty consistent.
Violence.
Yeah.
Well,
yeah.
Hold on. I want to go back to the Ten Commandments here and say.
Oh, you always want to go back to the Ten Commandments. It's just so holy and
No.
religious.
Why do you prefer that law over man's law?
If you got to ask that question, I'm starting to question you. When the Bible talks about honor your mother and father, it actually has a penalty for what that looks like when you don't. And when it has a trajectory that you continue to go down, that is a havoc to society.
Right.
And that is when you get the death penalty. So people don't think about this, but there is a death penalty in the lack of honoring your father and mother.
Y'all saw that the Pope today tweeted out.
Get rid of the death penalty.
Praying.
John MacArthur, the evangelical pope?
The Roman Catholic Pope.
Oh, that one. Okay.
Yeah, Oh man, I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
Anyways,
Pastor
the
MacArthur.
Pope tweeted out.
He tweeted out, let's all pray that the death penalty is an attack on human dignity. Let's all pray for it to end in all the nations of the world.
Ignoring Genesis 6.
9:6.
9:6.
Right. Yeah. But you're right. Actually, there's actually a maximum death penalty sometimes.
Yes.
In cases where
For rebellious children.
a kid is like, a juvenile delinquent who's violent, will not be corrected.
I'm going to tell you something. If I ever come home and I find that my boy has put his hands on his mama, there's going to be some problems in the house.
Yeah.
First, I'm going to rent my own shirt.
You're going to call me. You better call me.
I will call you and tell you there's blood everywhere. He's not dead, but you better get here quick. but seriously, but if that has happened, though, there's a failure that I've had to be able to disciple my own household. Right. And there's a lack of faithfulness that I have that's created that environment. Right. And I'm the blame. And I have the responsibility to fix that.
See,
what I'm trying to say is, though, that inside of society, when we have the failure of the home, there is always signs that before the boy ever got to the school, he was having fights with his parents, fights with his grandma. That wasn't the first time they had it. There was nothing done from the parental side to say, this boy, if he won't listen and obey the people who have authority over him in this home, he will be the type of person that shoots up a school. Right? We have no virtue coming from
breakdown
him.
of the family. So the report
is it true that the family did nothing, or did they go to certain authorities and the authorities said what he needs is more Ritalin?
No, they didn't.
Well,
they didn't
that's actually, Pastor, you hitting a good point. That's actually what the family did in some cases.
Right. Well, more Ritalin, more therapy.
He didn't get as much therapy as they thought he should have had.
Okay.
There was a breakdown between the mom and the son, and then that's why the son ended up with the grandmother. He was punching out walls and being physical with his mother, and so there was that there. Now, dad is nowhere.
Yeah.
Right? There's
he's deadbeat. He's not even in a situation.
So
it says the report says he had no father figure.
Yeah. So, but it's interesting.
And mother struggled with substance abuse.
Why is the report putting in there that the house had implications on what drove the attacker to do what he did? Even the report,
they still recognize that.
Because Texas got something right.
Yeah.
Right. Well. Okay, if I must play it.
Are we gonna do that? Are you gonna do
Don't
that?
play it. It's not warranted here. It's not.
No,
this is not.
No, you're right. They don't deserve to hear. But I think you're right, and so I don't want to look past that reality and say, well, hold on, there is something here.
No, yeah, and notice this. Notice how I can't talk. I'm sorry.
The beer's that good.
It's like I had one sip of it. How internally inconsistent we are.
Right.
Contradictory we are. We want to celebrate everybody expressing their sexual urges and desires all day long.
Right.
Which means you end up with fatherless boys.
Yeah, that's right.
And
that's
so,
exactly what that means.
I mean, like, connect the dots. Those pride parades,
Yep.
that tranny stuff in the libraries, that creates fatherless boys that are angry and confused and sad and depressed, and they shoot up schools.
And so just in the breakdown, the factual conclusions from the committee, here's the things that they outline as problematic. Communication and lockdown alerts. Effect of bailouts, doors and locks. You know, they go through and they say, what's the other things they have here? Robb Elementary had a culture of non-compliance with safety policies.
Right.
So they're going to go through and break down. If it's right to go through and break down all the failures of the school, interior classroom doors had problems, exterior doors had problems. The police.
Yeah, we talked about that yesterday.
I know. But my point is this. Look, even in the last, I'm bringing this up again just as a review. In the last part of the document, they say that the police chief Arredondo did not actually exercise tactical incident command over the BORTAC team. Yeah. So if you're going to bring that up to say that there was massive failures in how they protected the school, you have to bring to the table.
What's the penalty? Is there a penalty?
There is no, in here, it's not like, well, and the family refused to raise a citizen for society that would be helpful and beneficial and love their neighbors. Right? That has to be part of the criticism. Failure of what happened here.
Right.
But part of what we also got to distinguish is the difference between moral culpability and criminal culpability.
Yeah.
So that's why I'm absolutely convinced of the father's and the family's moral culpability.
Yeah.
They need to be covered in sackcloth and ashes, tore their clothes, repenting to their neighbors.
That they raised a kid
that did this in the society. They ought to be doing that. It's morally culpable.
Yeah.
But I'm not sure it's criminally culpable. I think the direct cause. So back to the ox goring situation. I don't think that applies here. But I would say that the the negligence of the police force and those who are in charge of the school.
Yeah.
That seems to be a real negligence.
Yeah.
And that would seem to then give the right that there ought to be restitution done.
Yeah.
And
So you believe that the families have legitimate reason to sue the Texas Department of Public Safety and the school?
Yeah. And Planned Parenthood and Pride festivals everywhere. I'm kidding.
Wait.
I'm just.
Yeah.
No, I'm kidding.
I see what you're saying.
But it's all connected. But my point is, and I don't know what the number is. So I mean, like that number billion, I don't know where they got that number from.
Right.
What does that even represent?
Well, 12 families.
Yeah, I know, but
is it?
I don't know where they get that from.
Right.
And I don't know what our precedent is for deciding adequate damages. But I would say,
I can come up with a few.
But I would say that's the biblical principle. The biblical principle would be you've deprived us of these human beings who are useful parts of our family and our community, and it's harmed our well-being and our families, and there would be damages related to that.
So Margot Cleveland has a great take on the whole Trump Mar-a-Lago.
Margot, don't be confused. Margot has a great take on Mar-a-Lago.
Yes.
Hey.
Yeah, follow that one.
We should have Margot on.
Now, just to go back real quick, August 8th, Trump's Mar-a-Lago house was raided. Okay, and it was raided on the basis of two affidavits. One affidavit's basis was the Presidential Records Act, and the other one was the Espionage Act.
Okay,
and Margot kind of goes through and notes for the Presidential Act, the Presidential Records Act. There's actually no criminal penalties associated with the Presidential Records Act.
Yeah,
okay.
It's just
no criminal penalty.
It's more like
it's an administrative thing.
It's an administrative thing, and apparently judges have left up to the presidents. There's a difference between private information and presidential information,
right? And
that definition of what's private, they've kind of just let the president kind of take that. The charge of that. What definition?
Until now.
One of the things that Margot pointed out in one of her articles at the Federalist, which we recommend you go check out, was that apparently when Obama left office, he took like several truckloads of papers with him.
Yeah, right.
And was in communication with the Federal Records Office
for
a number of months. Until they finally figured out, like apparently Obama has like a former president's little mini museum in Chicago, and he's like got a bunch of his records there or something like that. And it was just like, oh yeah, we'll work with you. And it was like months of it. And the FBI never got called once.
Yeah. And so that's obviously they were working with the Presidential Records Act and the Historical Archives Society or organization that's in charge of all this.
National Archives Records Administration.
Yeah, they were working with Trump, and then they finally it appears to me that something went south between the National Archive and Trump, and then
they got
what
Margot pointed out. Margot pointed out that the guy that's the head of the National Archives, who just recently retired, apparently is on record saying that January 6th was the worst day of his life.
Yeah.
So there's at least a prima facie argument that he already had a chip on his shoulder, and he's like, and if Trump was being at all challenging working with him at all, it wouldn't take
much to
push him over.
Mm-hmm.
So, but what's more interesting is that the FBI used the Espionage Act to go after Trump as the basis of one of the affidavits, and the Espionage Act. This is crazy. This is I just cannot trust the FBI. I'm having such a hard time trusting the FBI from the last number of years. I've doubted the FBI since Woodrow Wilson.
And you weren't even alive then.
I wasn't even alive then.
And you were doubting it then.
I was like 1915. Come on. But here's what's crazy. So they had, and this is, Margot's kind of piecing this together with the unredacted areas of the affidavit that you could read.
By the way, all the classified papers I have are heavily redacted.
Yeah, that's right. All right. So
just like that, exactly. Those are mine.
To use the Espionage Act, they had to say that some of the documentation that Trump had fell under the National Defense Information. The categorized as NDI. National Defense
Information. It has to fall under that in order to fall under the Espionage Act.
For them to say that Trump potentially had NDI information,
right?
An FBI agent signed the search warrant of the affidavit, attested to the basis of his training and experience. From his training experience, he knows that documents classified at these levels typically contain NDI information.
Typically.
That's That's how they used the Espionage Act as the basis for the second affidavit.
Who's this judge?
And the judge was a former Epstein friend.
Windmill
friend
or
of
something like
Epstein.
that?
Yeah.
And
This is like, and if you remember the whole Russiagate thing, that they used FISA courts.
Oh,
Yeah.
Right? And they used like...
For the dossier.
For dossier files. And
they
used
leaked information to a newspaper that then they used with the court in order
Yahoo
to get,
News. You remember that?
In order to
they
get,
leaked information to Yahoo News, and then they used that information they got from Yahoo News and said, hey, Judge, sign this.
Look.
Sign this. And that's what they've done here with the Espionage Act and the FBI.
Yeah.
Is they used one of their own people to testify based on his experience that information, it probably includes NDI information that Trump has.
We had FBI at the Grace Agenda block party.
Yeah, we did.
Right. They were probably looking for my classified papers.
I've had...
Who are you and why are you here again?
No names here, but I've had some FBI agents call me about all that.
I haven't.
They did their homework and found out who's who.
I haven't. I don't know nothing about it.
Yeah.
My
Kinda
name's
funny.
Bennett. I ain't in it. Here's some things though so as I'm going through this thing with Margot Cleveland, let me just give you guys a title of the article because this is fantastic. It's some of the best writing that I've seen on it. Its title is Redacted Mar-a-Lago Affidavit Confirms Biden's DOJ Fished for a Crime to Pin on Trump.
Yep.
And I remember we had Margot on the show. She wasn't a huge Trump fan. I don't think she's a huge Trump fan. I think she's just a person who she's a good lawyer.
I think she's and a journalist.
And a journalist at the same
actually
time.
trying to give us good information. Yeah.
But here's something that I was thinking about. This isn't just an average Joe walking down the street. We're talking about a president of the United States.
Right.
And so for somebody to go and create an affidavit to be able to get inside the president's private dwellings to get information means that they better have their I's dotted and T's crossed.
Yeah, but they actually had their T's dotted and their I's crossed this time. It was
one of the other things that Margot points out in one of the articles I read is because he's a former president, his residence is heavily guarded.
Yeah. Probably one of the safest places on planet Earth.
Exactly. Yeah. Like they are like it's like he's made a big point about this. That's like under lock and key in safes.
Yeah.
And there's Secret Service
agents around the house.
Like all over the place. Yeah. It's one of the safest. Like the whole argument, like this is dangerous. State secrets, might be. I mean, no, it's under lock and key, and there's people there risking their lives to protect it all.
Yeah. So one of the things that I've learned from just how law enforcement works and how the courts work, I think it's easy for a lot of people to make the assumption that the courts are absolutely gone. And that the law enforcement is absolutely depraved and it's all messed up. I even want to feel that way in a lot of ways. But I think what we have to look at is what we have are individuals who don't have virtue, and those individuals falsify documents to judges that believe the falsification, and then creates a domino effect down the road that makes us look at all of our institutions and say they're polluted. I don't think that's an accident. I think part of the play here, ultimately, the big picture is for individuals to look at their institutions and say the institutions are absolutely depraved, broken, and incapable, and so let's revolt against them.
I think you're right.
I think there's an attitude to say, no, the institutions can't be restored, can't be rebuilt, and so what we need to do is we have the social justice movement on one side wanting revolution, and we have this other group,
libertarians, radical libertarians,
your Soros influence, that wants to have another revolution on the other side of institutions. I want to say, step back for a moment.
You're right.
I think, to pull a word from Trump, there are good people on both sides. I'm not talking about. But what
are you talking, Charleston?
But what I want to say is that what happens is a few bad apples down here can make Breonna Taylor's situation.
Right.
We're back here again, right? We have these two detectives falsifying information to be able to get with this affidavit
no-knock warrant
to get a no-knock warrant on our house,
Uh-huh.
and the social justice movement, in one case, I think, are kind of these guard dogs. I think there's some real stuff going on, and some people are seeing a problem, but they're assessing it wrong.
Right.
And then they say it's all race. And what do we run and do? It's not race.
Right.
But there was a problem with the virtue of the individual.
Right. There was real injustice that happened.
Yes.
But if all you think about is race,
then you'll miss
the meat.
That's right.
Same thing with a lot of the abuse watchdogs, the Me Too stuff. They found some real gnarly stuff.
That's right.
There's some real gnarly leaders out there that need to be prosecuted to the full extent of the law.
They didn't go after all of them.
And but that's the thing is because if you set it up in Marxist categories,
that's right.
You set it up in critical race, critical theory categories where it's all about power and weakness,
right?
Then you're not gonna see the world rightly. What you need is biblical categories of justice and recognize that there really are bad guys that need to be got.
Right, and I think that what we see here happening is we see some of this. We see, and I want to put this back again at the home. If we are not raising people of virtue in our own homes, when we send them out, what do you think we're going to get?
Right.
We're going to get people who don't know what virtue looks like.
You're going to get Uvalde.
Right. And corrupt FBI
and a bunch of guys who some aren't corrupt that are just following the guys who are poisoning the system.
Well, when you defend Planned Parenthood and you put cops around Planned Parenthood for 50 years, you get this.
Right.
When you defend the hospitals that are mutilating young women and boys, you're going to get this.
Right. Or, I mean, even the defense of these public schools, I want them to be safe, of course.
Yeah.
But these public schools, they are absolute factories.
Yeah.
Of this kind of atheistic worldview.
Yes.
Like conservatives need to stop sending their kids to public schools.
That's right.
Just because they don't have drag queens yet, just because they're not doing perverse sex education classes yet. Mm-hmm. Here's the bottom line. If they're trying to teach your kid all day long that they can do history, science, math, literature, and not thank God for them all day long, you're raising atheists.
That's right.
And those atheists will one day say, you know what? Mm-hmm. What is virtue?
Yeah.
Might makes right.
Yeah.
You know, the strongest survive.
Speaking of atheists, Boniface Woodworking exists for those who enjoy shopping with integrity, who want to buy handmade wooden furniture, gifts, and heirloom items that will last for generations.
Oh, me.
For generations, all right? Atheists don't understand it. From dining tables, the atheists want your kids for generations. From dining tables and church pulpits, cigar humidors, and everything in between, quality pieces that you can give your children's children. To them, to the roots, and transcend the basic function of whatever they are. So start voting with your dollars, amen, and stop buying cheap crap from people who hate you. Visit bonifacewoodworking.com to see our gallery, to see their gallery, and learn their story, and submit your order for heirloom quality wood items. And we got some, Thanksgiving coming up, Christmas coming up. You put your order in because he'll build it. It's great.
Psalm of the day is Psalm 110. You guys know Psalm 110 is the psalm that is quoted the most in the New Testament?
I did not. I know that now.
Yeah, it's true. It's short and sweet and punchy.
Paul quotes it multiple times.
We're going to sing it at the Fight Laugh Feast conference.
Yes, we are.
This is on our psalm list. Aaron Snell is going to be there. Going to be there in Knoxville with us. The Lord said to my Lord, sit thou at my right hand until I make thy enemies thy footstool. The Lord shall send the rod of thy strength out of Zion. Rule thou in the midst of thine enemies. Thy people shall be willing in the day of thy power, and the beauty of holiness. From the womb of the morning, thou hast the dew of thy youth. The Lord hath sworn and will not repent. Thou art a priest forever after the order of Melchizedek. The Lord at thy right hand shall strike through kings in the day of his wrath. He shall judge among the heathen. He shall fill the places with dead bodies. He shall wound the heads of many countries. He shall drink of the brook in the way, and he shall lift up the head. Jesus famously references this psalm when asking the Pharisees what they made of the Messiah, and specifically, whose son is he? The Pharisees knew their catechism and said, it's the son of David. And then Jesus agreed and asks, but about this psalm, why does David call him my Lord then? In terms of honor, even a crowned king would defer to his father or his grandfather as his Lord and call him Lord, not the other way around. Why is David calling his descendant Lord? The Pharisees dared not answer Jesus. The clear indication is that the Messiah will be the son of David, but greater than David.
That's right.
And in Mark's gospel, it says that when the common people heard him say that, they were glad. Likewise, Peter quotes this psalm in his Pentecost sermon, arguing that Jesus proved to be the greater son of David when he rose from the dead, since David didn't rise from the dead. It's a pretty good argument, actually. Paul alludes to this psalm when he says that Jesus is risen from the dead and must put down all rule and authority and power and reign until he's put all his enemies under his feet, 1 Corinthians 15. Hebrews contrasts Jesus with angels, quoting this psalm, sit at my right hand till I make your enemies thy footstool. Has he ever said that to an angel
Not
before?
to the angels.
In fact, Psalm 110 is the most quoted psalm in the New Testament, and verse 1 is quoted the most. But verse 4 is also quoted several times in the book of Hebrews, referring to the priesthood of Jesus according to the order of Melchizedek. The psalm also alludes back to Genesis 3, where God promises a great war between the seed of the woman and the seed of the serpent. Ultimately, the seed of the woman will crush the head of the seed of the serpent. So here, the Messiah is said to wound the heads of many countries. The rod of the Messiah's rule reminds us of Psalm 2, where the kings of the earth are warned to kiss the Son, lest he smash them to pieces like potter's vessels. But the central way Jesus strikes down the devil and all his offspring and smashes their heads is through the cross and the word of that cross that goes out of his mouth. John says that he appeared to take away our sins. Just a few verses later, he says he appeared to destroy the works of the devil. And both those go together. When Jesus was lifted up, he was lifted up just like the serpent in the wilderness. So the serpent was crushed on the cross in the death of Jesus. And this is because the power of the serpent is accusation. But all the accusations that could ever be brought against us were nailed to the cross, it says in Colossians 2. But this means the power of all of Satan's seed, all those rulers that rise up against Christ, is in guilt, shame, and accusation. Mm-hmm. The power of the Great Reset, the power of Biden, the power of crony capitalists, corrupt Republicans, Planned Parenthood, and all the enemies of Jesus is all satanic. And that means that it only has the power of accusation. And this is why the cross crushes all their heads. The cross is the end of all accusation. The cross is the end of all condemnation. The cross is inescapably political, but it's not political like a bunch of Americans think. It's political precisely because it disarms all fleshly tyrannical power. Mm-hmm. It sets men and women free by setting them free from their sins, free from every accusation, all shame. And that freedom is true spiritual power and authority that always builds cultures of liberty. There's your Psalm of the day.
Psalm 110. Wow, we're going to sing this at the conference, huh? I can't wait for that. Gabe, what are you thinking about? You're in deep thought.
Yeah, I got just a number of thoughts. I mean, we got to close out, but
yeah,
you know,
you gonna hit me with some for the backstage?
Oh, do we want to go backstage?
Yeah, let's go back.
Yeah,
I think
let's do that.
why not?
Yeah.
A little bit.
Let's do it.
I just don't think Christians think enough about what drives fleshly politics. Fleshly politics, the politics of this world, the Bible teaches, is driven by accusation, guilt, and shame.
That's right.
Yeah,
that's the power. That's the currency that drives it all. And I don't think people understand when you preach the cross.
Yep.
That's preaching the end of that kind of power.
Yeah.
Is it Rush Judy's book, the politics of guilt manipulation?
Politics of guilt and pity.
Guilt and pity, that's what it is. Okay, we'll talk a little bit about that backstage. If you're single, get married. If you're married, have you some kids. And if you have kids, go baptize them. Until tomorrow, love God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength. Love your neighbor as yourself. Go fight, laugh, and feast. This is Cross Politic.
This last part. Hear that organ?
So good.
That's got some testosterone in it right there.
Hi, I'm Robert Borton, CEO of Classical Conversations, the world's largest classical Christian homeschooling community. I'm launching a new podcast, Refining Rhetoric. If you like cross politics or just listen to hear what crazy stuff they're saying today, you will enjoy Refining Rhetoric. You can find us on your favorite podcast platform. I practice the 15 tools of learning by interviewing great guests, looking at current events, and talking about cryptocurrency.
This is where Dave and I plan this year's company holidays.
Let's go through the list.
Easter.
Too religious.
St. Patrick's Day.
Too white. Mother's Day.
Way too cisgendered.
All of your usual holidays have been canceled this year.
But we still have Karl Marx's birthday!
Need a real reason to party? Find a new job at redballoon.work.